Chronicles.
What's good, fam? I'd like to welcome y'all to Brown Boy Chronicles, experiencing stories of 3 first-gen brown boys and 1 foreigner/immigrant brown boy just out here growing up in the States. We'd like for you to join in our challenges, our come-ups, our glow-ups, our struggles, and just overall our lives. We hope y'all enjoy. Welcome to Brown Boy Chronicles. This is episode 7. As y'all know, we like to bring on brown creatives occasionally onto the pod and share their stories. This week we decided to switch it up a bit and bring on a different sort of creative. I'd like to welcome Samraaj Bath, who's a programmer/builder, child enthusiast, entrepreneur, and a bit of everything else in between. Hope y'all enjoy.
You stopped by the house that one day.
Yeah, that's where I got to try the
ice cream. The CHAICECREAM, bro.
How do you properly pronounce it? I
say CHAICECREAM.
Chais?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I usually say chais.
Try to
emphasize like the
cha. Yeah, I prefer to say it cha ice cream, but like, I mean, it's just kind of, it's too good of a branding play to say chais.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
So, how'd you come up with the idea and like, how'd you like execute that shit? Because I saw that on fucking Twitter.
Yeah, dude, the Twitter.
I just promoted it, but I never knew you fucking were like doing something like that.
I think Twitter's what blew it up, honestly.
Yeah, Twitter is what blew it up. I got hundreds of thousands of impressions on Twitter for it.
God damn.
Yeah, it was crazy. How did I come up with the idea? I just do a lot of cooking. Yeah, but basically I've always been really into the idea of like, taking something traditional and then doing something a little bit different from it, but while like adhering to the same like standards of it, right? So if you ask yourself, what is cha, right? Cha is like hot tea with milk that's aerated, right? You boil it or whatever, and it essentially like incorporates air into the mixture to make it creamy, right? And if you were to try to do like a cold brew or a cold version of like cha, it doesn't really work because it's always flat, right? There's never air in it anymore. So I was playing around with like a couple of different things just because I was bored. And I at one point had made like a nitro. So like basically I took a little whippet machine and I put the like cold brew chai in there, and then I foamed it up. And that stuff was really, really good, but like I never really got around to selling it because it was really difficult to do. And then I remember at one point I was in my parents' kitchen and I was just messing around and decided to make ice cream. Because we had this like old ice cream maker I like unearthed from the garage from like fucking 10 years ago or whatever. And I like realized to myself that like, hey, ice cream is literally just like air incorporated into a cream mixture. That is what makes it creamy, right? Like you have air trapped in between your ice crystals. I was like, okay, that's essentially just a different way of aerating this. So what if I just did it with cha?
How does the air even get in there?
So essentially,
how did you find this out? Like, how do you know? Why do you know this fact?
Bro, I'm just like really deep into cooking. Like, you have no idea when it's like a personality trait of mine. When I like want to do something, I try to learn everything from the fundamentals upwards, right? Like when I want to make an Italian dish, I'll literally go onto Google Italy and search the name of the dish and then go to like an Italian cooking page and then translate it to like English.
Dog, where do you have time for that though? That takes so much time and effort. How do you make time for shit like that?
I don't know. Samraaj, I'm the same way. That's why I just stay away from cooking.
Yeah, man, it's a rabbit hole, bro. It's a rabbit hole. The answer is I don't have time. So I'm like procrastinating on the other shit I have to do when I'm like cooking and stuff like that. That's the real answer. But then like I turn it into work and stuff for me, right? Like I don't really do much in terms of like relaxing, like in the traditional sense. Like doing stuff like this is relaxing for me, right? It's how I like de-stress myself from the day. It's how I like, find the time to, just like kick it and come to peace with myself, right? But yeah, essentially what you were asking about is how the air get in there. Essentially what you're doing is in ice cream churn is you have like walls that are really cold, which are freezing it. And the churn is basically continuously taking the part that's frozen and reincorporating into the entire thing. So you like have the smallest particle that is frozen possible. And when you do that, you basically get like a crystalline network, which air is trapped into inside the thing. And that's what makes it creamy, right? And that's what like basically whips it up. You're doing a similar thing when you're like whipping cream. Like if you have like a whisk and you whip cream, you're basically trapping air inside of the mixture. But anyway, point being is
that's the cold one. How does it work on the hot one?
So in the hot one, it's the same type of thing, right? Like you have air that's just boiled into the mixture and it just becomes incorporated into there. If you leave your jaw like standing for a while, it's going to go flat, right? Like
so wait, why is that not happening with like coffee and stuff like that? Or is it just like
that's what foamed milk is, right? Like when you have a cappuccino and you pour like the foam on it, that's literally just the same thing. It's steamed milk is trapping air inside of the milk like structure. Yeah, he's like
yo, he's so good.
so over that.
Yeah. But anyway, I made this ice cream at home and I gave it to my dad. My dad's like, bro, you got to sell this.
How many tries did it take you to get like the perfect recipe? The perfect combo?
Trialed. So, I mean, the process I used is the first one actually came out really well, but it came out really well, but it's a little bit too strong for most people. So I decided to first like run a little bit of a trial on my Instagram. I like posted a picture of it and I was like, yo, I made this. It tastes really good. Does anyone want to try it in the Seattle area? I got like 10, 15 people like that hit me up, be like, yo, I'm trying to try it. So I basically like split tested a couple of different ones and I had them each try like 2 of them. And then I figured out, I put too much lychee in there because I like lychee and like a lot of people thought it was like way too strong. And then I just like nailed it down in the span of about a week and a half. And then after that, I was like, okay, this is my final recipe. I went into Figma. I made a little logo for myself. I got packages from the cash and carry store, which is now I think Chef's Plus store or whatever.
Yeah, you went all out real quick too.
Yeah, I applaud you for that.
Yeah,
like for how you went like full production, like you got like marketing, you got like the stickers, you got all that shit. Like that's dope.
It's a skill that I have built out of my years working, right? Like I've had experience working as a engineer. I've had experience working as a manager of like managed a design team and done marketing in the past. So like all those skills combined to like be able for me to be able to like really quickly launch and iterate on products, right?
Did you make the logo yourself or did somebody else make that?
I made the logo myself. I unearthed some like random like label stickers that I had from like 15 years ago or something like that in my mom's garage or some shit.
Yeah.
I put it all together.
So you're just the type to like start everything from scratch. And like you want like every facet of it done yourself.
No, not necessarily. I like to delegate a lot, right? It basically is so I can apply leverage to something. So I don't have to do things myself and actually have a lot more ability to scale. But I mean, for early things like this, and this was like one of the first entrepreneurial things I did just fully on my own, I like to do it myself. I think from the start in terms of how much cash I invested, I think the total was $8, right? $8 was registering my domain. Everything else I did pre-sales on. So I actually had all of my cost margins out. The domain cost me $8. I built like the ordering system myself. It took me like an afternoon of writing the code. I built the logos myself. I did all of like the printing of my labels. I made the recipe myself. I built out all my first batch and like I found like random coolers and I filled them up with ice, all that. And yeah, I posted.
You were only delivering like locally though, right? Did you ever expand out of Seattle?
It's too expensive. I mean, I could do like some marketing with like some dry ice and stuff and like up my costs, but I just never thought it was worth it.
Is it still up and running or is it kind of something that just like faded away now?
It is still up and running, but I don't really put any marketing effort into it because like the margins are really good. But when I delegated it out to like having a churner and like a delivery driver and stuff, it just wasn't worth it to scale. And in order to scale like the production side, it would cost me like 50 to 60K because that's how big the like ice cream machines are. Then I would need to get a warehouse space and a professional cooler and stuff.
I mean, you could always license it out to like Indian restaurants around you.
Yeah, that's actually a very good idea. But the thing is I have a lot of other things on my plate and I consider that to be more of like a passion project because I'm very into cooking.
So is it completely passive now? Like essentially you're not really like you have somebody you share the ingredients with, they're making it like a cook. Essentially. Yep.
That's exactly what it is. I have somebody come to my garage and just churn it for me whenever I need to.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah.
Wait, so just going back real quick. So when did you like actually start this business?
This was in July or August of 2020. Yeah, like it was.
You were in production like pretty much like a month after that, right? Or like
2 weeks.
When did you tweet it?
2 weeks. So from ideation to launch, it was about 2 weeks. And I tweeted about it. Like I remember I took construction paper and I like had like a backdrop that was pink. Like there was just a bunch of construction paper taped together and I like held a cone of it and I just took photos of it like that. And I tweeted out those photos, put on my Instagram. I was expecting like 20 orders or something like that in the first week total. I think I got like a couple 100,000 impressions on Twitter pretty quickly. And I think I sold 150 plus in the first day, something crazy like that. And man, it was fucked up because I had like one old ass ice cream machine that could do 4 at a time. And I was not expecting that type of like engagement. So I remember I had to like hit up all my customers and be like, yo, there's going to be a little bit of wait on delivery on this. It's going to take me probably like a week to get it to everyone. And then I hit up like fucking 50 aunties in like the Punjabi community. And I was like, yo, does anyone have an ice cream maker? And I managed to borrow 4 And then I had literally a production line going in my garage of 4 different ice cream makers that were all running simultaneously. Cause these are like the old school ones that I would have to freeze in between. So it was fucking insanity. Like I had my mom come and help me. I was doing all this crazy stuff and I was spending like,
I still have your tweet up like from when you like, that's like the first tweet on my Twitter, because I don't use Twitter at all. So I just retweeted this.
Oh, it's hella funny.
Bro, I mean, yeah, like look at this. Like, yeah, I appreciate like this marketing. Like this is a nice ass photo right here.
What the parlay G, dude? That's fucking funny.
And then
I have a parlay G on the top of it.
Yeah, that's so funny. I was telling Harvey early, like I'm South Indian and like nobody says chai. It's like always just chai. Like it sounds like a white person saying it, but like that's like everywhere else.
He was confused when I said, because we call it ja. And he's like, yo, what is that?
In Punjabi. So there's actually like really interesting etymology when it comes to like the origin of that word. So ja is actually a Chinese term. So because I mean, tea is a Chinese plant and the original term is actually ja. And then it came, I think, through Bengal or something like that in like the trading routes to India. And I guess it retained its original phrase in Punjabi and Urdu, but like when it went to Hindi, it became chai. And it's really interesting because at some point somebody started saying tea and you could actually see the spread of the word like across the world based on like what they say. If you look at the Middle Eastern Mediterranean trade routes, they all say some derivation of ja. And if you look at any of the sea trade routes, aka the ones that went to European countries, they all say some derivation of tea. It's really cool because it's just like duality, but they all just span from the exact same 2 spots.
No, all I was saying is like, Samraaj, you're like the brown Joe Rogan. How do you know all this shit, bro?
Dude, I just
who got ja first? Because like the Hindu people has been around longer than us. So like didn't they get it essentially before us, or is it like that modern?
It was Sanskrit. Right? In Sanskrit there was ja, and then there was just like slowly languages evolve as like people as like cultures grow, right? Like even the name Sikandar, right? Like that is actually just Alexander, right? Like Alexander sorry, I just like go off about facts, bro. I read a lot, right? But like Alexander was originally Alexandros like in Greek, and then slowly like the name transitioned through the Middle East because Alexander the Great, and Iskandar is I think what they called them in the Middle East, and then eventually in Punjab they started calling him Sikandar. And then it just became a name. So it's literally the same origin of the name as Alexander. There's all sorts of words like this that have just evolved over time. It's pretty
that is wild, man. You know so much about so many things. Yeah. And you like research the product that you're selling. That's a good trait to have for sure. I mean,
yeah, man, I'm not trying to sell like no bullshit that I don't know anything about. Right. Like
was there anything of that sort in the market when you created it or not really? Because I mean, they have like lychee flavored like ice cream, right?
They had like kulfi. They have like kulfi and stuff like that, but nothing like what I made. Now there are other folks that have done similar things.
Damn, did you trademark it or patent it or anything?
Nope. I mean, I didn't really consider it like that type of a business. I mean, if anyone wants to do like operations and stuff like that to me and like scale it, like I'm willing to talk and hire out. But I mean, for the time being, I'm just very, very satisfied just having it as like a fun, like passion project that just runs on its own. You know, got a lot of
so how many like hours a week are you putting into your full-time job versus this? Like, what's like the breakdown?
My full-time job is I just have businesses, right? Like I have a tech startup is my full-time gig, which we just recently got some venture funding for. So I mean, that probably spend about 80 hours a week on. I work probably like 12 to 14 hours a day or something to that extent. Like I just get up and work and then just do it. But maybe not all on that because I have a couple of other projects that I manage. CHAICECREAM, I probably do an hour every 2 weeks or so. It's basically like fully delegated. We have a small real estate development business that we do. Like we build single family homes. I spend a couple hours a week on that, just like managing through like the permitting process. I have another like birthday wishing app that I developed. I have like some interns working on it right now. I probably spend like 5-6 hours a week on it, and rest of my time.
Birthday wishing app.
Yeah, bro. It's another thing that I launched during COVID. It's essentially just, yeah. Have you ever contributed to a montage video for somebody's birthday? Like somebody asks you to record like, "Yo, happy birthday, Lucky. I fucking love you."
Man, we're Indian, man. We don't do that shit.
No, okay, I know you're talking about though. Yeah, I've seen it.
Everyone in my family's been doing that the last 2 years, man.
Hey, man.
I was like, I don't do that shit.
Yeah, no, that's a thing, right? So I noticed that there was like a lot of friction around that because people would ask me to iMessage them a video, and then it was like a bitch and a half to record, and then somebody would go and spend hours like collecting all the stuff and then editing it together, and then half the time I wouldn't even get to see the result or the person's reaction, which was just like, is a load of bullshit, right? And I looked on the market to see if there were other people like approaching this from a tech side. There were a couple of companies, but they all charge something like $100 in order to do it, which is like absurdity. So I just like went in and I built like another version of it right before my friend's birthday. I think the MVP took me like 4 or 5 days to build out. Like it was really scrappy and shitty looking. And all it does is basically you get like a unique link, like, it's your bday.co/lucky. And then you send that out to everyone and they just have a video, like ability to just record a video on the spot. And they put in their number and they get texted when everything is ready. And all it does is it just takes all those videos and automatically edits it to like one big thing with like a couple, like, like a little happy birthday, like animation or whatever at the beginning. And then you could just send it out and the birthday person could get like record a reaction and send it to people. Made the MVP.
Damn, that's actually hella dope. Well, you're like the example of like what I aspire to be in terms of like like functionality, in terms of like how you perceive the world, right? Like I want that stuff to like come like how you recognize the problem, right? You're like, yo, this is a simple thing and you don't really think much of it. You recognize the problem, you recognize the, like how you said, like the friction, and then you like went about like creating a solution for it. And that's like how anybody in tech and like innovation, like that's how they all maneuver. Like that's like a mind switch. Like you just go through daily life and you like look for like little minute things that could like need revamping or like improvement. And then like it's those adjustments that you make that like potentially lead to like these dope things like what you're doing of like creating apps and shit for it.
Yeah.
Have you always been like this, Samraaj? Have you always been like this, Samraaj? You kind of like deconstruct things and then you kind of reassemble them back and then you're with your own little twist?
I have, but the thing is I will say it's a very highly trained skill, right? Like I used to do this for a living, essentially, right? Being a product manager at like an early stage startup, like your entire job is to like recognize opportunities and like figure out how to build solutions for them, right? And I also will say it's a trap, right? Like, over engineering shit and like having too much tech in our lives is a bunch of bullshit. And a lot of people build a bunch of bullshit for the sake of building bullshit, right? Like it's more about like recognizing what actually is worth it to build and what like where you can properly apply the leverage that you have in your life, right? And for me, thankfully, like I've gone through a bunch of iterations and I've built out a skill set of being able to launch the stuff like I mentioned earlier. So it takes less for me to just go and approach these problems, right? Whereas for somebody else who has to like hire somebody to like to build it or hire somebody to do some design work or hire somebody to like figure out some marketing, they have to like spend a lot more of their capital or spend a lot more of their hours or do a lot more investment in it. Whereas I could just like build something scrappy and test something out a lot more quickly.
Going off that, so you say it's like a highly trained skill. So like you obviously have gone into something that you might have dove your feet too much into. So how do you deal with that situation where it's like, it's not going your way or something like that?
Move on. That's the only thing I could say, right? Like life comes with its losses, life comes with its victories, right? And the biggest thing is about repetitions, right?
Yeah. So you've quit full projects before just because?
Fuck yeah, I have. I've done it so many times. Dude, I have had so many swings and misses in my life. Like I used to cut hair for a long time. I mean, Rinku, you used to do this too, right? Like in college and shit.
Yeah, I still cut hair. Like, yeah.
I know, but like, I mean, there's
I don't cut it professionally, but like I still get it done. And
there you go.
My homies still come through.
When we went to Canada, you should have seen his haircut on Lucky.
Yo, that shit was trash, bro. That shit was so trash.
That's because that
shit was trash. Yo, this man gave me the worst fucking beard lineup in the world. I look fucking Mexican, bro. I didn't even look brown.
Yo, you're looking French. I don't know what you're talking about. Yo, when was the time when you touched my nipple? Yo,
wait, what do you do?
Yo,
repeat the story.
When I'm like, yeah. So when I'm like cutting people's hair, right? Well, like obviously, like if it's not outside or anything like that, like obviously like you'll like go there or whatever. But we were in like hotel situation, right? I didn't want to get hair all over me. So I was like, yo, Lucky, just get in your boxers. And I was just in my boxers too, because I'm not trying to get hair all over my clothes and shit. Man. So we're pretty much just like naked in the bathroom. And I'm kind of and like he like touches my nipple. And then
we're face to face and we made eye contact. I had to do something, bro. Like I just couldn't. I just had to.
I don't think the nipple part is the like I think everything else.
I was young, bro. Like that's just the first thing that came to my mind. I can't help it.
I was legit trying to line him up, and like literally, like the razor went like in a different direction. That shit fucked him up. Hard. How do we fix it? Do we just give you a faux hog, or do we just?
No, you just made everything so like short on the sides, because what you did was like it was in DC. That's when it happened.
Yeah, DC. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were just like fading me, and then I touched your nipple, and then you like fucked up the fade, and then you had to make everything like one. Like you had to make everything one. I think you were trying to give me a 2, or you might have to make me a bald fade or some shit like that. And it just looks so goofy because you can't do scissors, and I just had like a little fucking troll doll hair up on top, yo, where it was just so it looks so goofy, and they were trying to like gas me up. They're like, yo, that looks fresh, they're just like trying to tell me, yo, it looks fresh. I mean, I'm at this point, I'm like, fuck it, it is what it is.
You're looking like a young Drake now, though. Shoot.
I know. I told him, bro, I do.
It's a little bit different when you say it yourself. It's a little bit different when you say it yourself. It's like,
I mean, I'm just being honest with myself, bro. Like, I know I do. I'm not, when I look in the mirror, like I just see excellence. I can't help it.
Hey man, I see your snaps. I see your snaps to me every day, like at the gym with like your nipples hanging out, and trying to like pose like Drake, man. I love it, man. I live.
Thank you. Yo, Samraaj, I have a question regarding like all these different, ventures in a way. How do you stay, like, from what you're describing, where you don't have any time off? What when I think of that type of person and that mindset, always just trying to drive ideas out, just to see where they go. Burnout. How do you deal with burnout in a way?
So, I mean, I actually have a really interesting relationship with burnout, in the sense that, like, when I worked for other people, that's when I burned out very quickly. Right. When I was working on stuff,
just to backtrack a little bit, like, what's your definition of burnout?
Burnout is when you clock in for the day and you don't want to do shit. Like, burnout is when you hate what you do on a day-to-day. Burnout is when things are like monotonous and you just want to break that cycle, or like, you just are at a point where you're at a tipping point about like your emotions behind what you do versus your drive for doing it. Right. Like, that's kind of what I consider burnout. And I mean, for me, I've had burnout in my previous jobs, right? Like, and that really just comes from not having the passion behind what I'm doing, or the ownership, right? It's like the entire agent owner like paradox, right? Like, people want like you to act as an agent, but like act as an owner, but you want to pay you like an agent. And I felt that in a lot of like previous jobs that I had. And then as soon as I went back into entrepreneurship, it just all went away, right? Like, I would rather work 10 to 12 hours for myself than to work 3 hours for somebody else. That's just like the type of person that I am. And now I don't feel burnout at all. I actually get up every day excited to do what I do and excited to build. And in terms of managing burnout, it's really like, or managing like my day to day, it's really just about optimizing for the flow state, right? I am of the opinion that like, having a productive flow state is actually like really difficult to get. But if you're able to do it even 2 times a week, that is much more productive than basically anyone else. And you would be able to outpace a lot of your competition. And what I mean by a flow state is basically when you're getting into a mindset in a zone where you're intensely focused on what you're building or what you're doing. And you just like knock out a bunch of tasks and you're basically in a hypnotic state, right?
Yeah.
And
time doesn't matter.
Time does not matter, right? And optimizing for flow state is like the best thing that you could possibly do, right?
How do you get into your flow state? Do you have like a routine that kind of like will put you into it?
I mean, again, this is also like very much so a trained skill, and I've trained myself in order to do it, right? Like, I have like a small routine that I have to follow in the mornings before I get set up for work. I make my little coffee, I make my chow or whatever the fuck, and then I go and sit down. And really the entire thing is just eliminating all distractions. And it's really less so about the routine of getting into flow state, but recognizing what pulls you out of it, right? If like I'm sitting in an area where like, somebody's talking and stuff like that, that pulls me out of flow state, I eliminate that, right? If I have my phone near me, it takes me out of flow state, I throw my phone in another room and I go to work now. If the heat or something like that is not right, I eliminate that and get right into my zone and just force myself to do it. And the other thing that I've realized is like the thought about action or the thought about pain is always much, much worse than the pain itself, right? And what that really translates to is just take the fucking first step, and then you'll trick yourself into getting into a flow state, right? If you start thinking about something, you'll just fall in love with the problem, then you just fucking start doing it. And the third thing that I do is I teach myself how to love every single problem that I'm solving, right? Even if I'm doing some like really crazy, like deep technical work on like something that I'm building, I really start to fall in love with like the technical aspect about why I'm doing it. And then it just excites me, right? Like I understand, basically trick my mind into getting excited about whatever bullshit ass problem, or no matter how boring it is. And then the flow state comes so much easier. And that's what I do.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do to optimize for flow state is now I basically read every night before I go to bed. I eliminate my phone as much as possible. And I have like my time with my phone, and like I'll have like dinner with my fam and shit like that, and just like fuck around on TikTok or whatever for a couple of hours or whatever. But as soon as I like throw that away, like right before I go to bed, it's always reading for a half hour, and then close my book, put it down, and then phone away. And I don't open my phone after I start reading. And then I go to sleep from there.
Yeah.
And
reading is definitely it's a hack to get into flow state. Cause like you can read like the first couple pages and your mind will still be wandering and stuff. But then once you like break like a certain amount of like text or like a certain amount of where like you start like really comprehending that shit and you really get sucked in. I'm the opposite. Exactly. Like I usually start my day like with reading, like in terms of if I'm going to work, like that's the first thing I do. And that kind of like puts me in. But then sometimes I just get like too like over like, yo, I'll like read like 30 minutes. I'm like, damn, I pat myself on the back, and then I'll start getting like, I'll get distracted and shit. Yep. And then like had to like come back to it. But
so that's my thing about it is like, yo, if you read and stuff like that more often, you kind of train your mind to be able to get into the state a lot more often, first off. And then the second off is I read before I go to sleep, because I'm exactly the same way, right? Like if I read and then I start fucking around on my phone, I basically take away all the benefits from it, right? So I read as the very last thing I do in the day, just to close it off every day. And yeah, that's like basically the things, like the hacks that I use in order to like get myself to be like very productive on a daily basis.
So you were talking about like, you know, how like you get excited for every problem, whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know Jim Quick, right? He does a bunch of YouTube videos and stuff on like brain health and brain, like just overall brain functionality. And one of his like things to like learn faster overall is like the number one thing to do is forget what you know about the topic. You know, when you go into a topic and you think you already know, you're like, I'm just going to skim through this bullshit, whatever. It's like the number one thing not to do. You want to act like you don't know it at all. And like, it's the first time you're learning it.
Let go of your ego and look at something with childlike bliss. That's how you have to approach basically every problem. You have to approach every problem with a pair of fresh eyes. And if something has been frustrating you for a while, work on something else for a little bit and then come back to it. That's like the way I go about it. There's a lot of problems where like I'm fucking want to throw my computer out the goddamn window or something like that for a while. And then I basically just work on something else for a bit. I look at it with a fresh pair of eyes and I'm able to solve it.
So Samraaj, have you always been like this, where like you thought like outside of the box, or is this just like what you're talking about? It's a trained skill where your first job, it forced you to be in this type of mindset, or is it like a combination of both?
Combination of the two. Talking to Lucky's point or Lucky's question, it is a combination of the two, right? I've always kind of been a contrarian in a lot of ways, but I've also recognized that, like, you know, being a contrarian for being the sake of a contrarian.
What's that mean?
You go against the grain. You go against the grain. You try to do everything different. Right? But being contrarian for the sake of
it's literally in the word, bro.
Yeah, you're contract. Yeah, I got you now.
Contrary, dog.
You're not contracting anything.
Contradicting. What the fuck?
Contradicting.
Bro, wrong word.
Yeah, but like I've always tried to be doing things a little bit different, right? Like, and I always, like you mentioned, I always kind of look at like systems and stuff like that and be like, man, like a lot of this is bullshit, right? Like the schooling system or the education system is literally 10% education, 50% fucking daycare / childcare, and
facts. Education system trash.
Yeah, and 30% of it's indoctrination, right? Like it's literally about training people to be like the most productive worker possible after a 9-to-5. And I personally don't even believe in the 9-to-5. I mean, that's just how I think. If people were trained or like indoctrinated like fucking the school system does for them, instead of 9-to-5, but for a place where you're actually talking about what you're producing, then they'll be doing it in that way, right? 9-to-5 is trained, just like having any disciplinary skill like that is trained, right? Like if the rewards or the incentives are there for people to actually approach stuff from that way, then it will happen. But I do agree with you, right? Like industrialization pushed a need for people to work in factories and stuff like that. But the way that technology is advancing, there's different ways that humans apply leverage, and the leverage that we apply is now more so going to be from like from like stuff we can define and produce on our own, right? So stuff is going to change. I don't believe in the 9-to-5 anymore. I mean, I work much more than a 9-to-5, but like that's different, right?
Yeah, my brother's in school right now, and I went up to visit, like he's at CMU, and almost all those kids, they're like slogging away right now, but they recognize that the 9-to-5 is like limiting and taking away their IP. So all of them don't want, I mean, at least his circle is like set on not working a 9-to-5 out of school. It's like you slog your ass off now, you do your time, and then you figure out how you can't like
yeah, man. So
someone else.
Can we have a functioning world though without like 9-to-5ers?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, only in modern society though, right? Because the advent of computers and robots and leverage and that type of, or not leverage, but like, the advent of computers, robots, and technology has made it so we don't have to have the worker that is there clocked in on everything. Maybe it is a far offset like world where like a lot of those jobs will be automated to the point, but I believe in a world where each person is contributing to society through their creative means, which is not 9 to 5.
Yeah. So just a little bit more context for our viewers. Like, what's like your background and like your family's background? Like, are they in like STEM as well?
So my dad is in tech, right? So my dad works at Microsoft. My mom does like QA and stuff like that. She works at Costco. And I mean, both of them came from India. They came from Punjab. My dad moved here in 1988. And same time, obviously my mom came. My dad came to like Buffalo, New York, worked at like...
Same.
Yeah. Hey, nice. And I think we moved to Seattle in like 1997. I was born in New Jersey. My sister was born in like Detroit area. And I grew up over there. And in terms of like my background, I was a little weirdo that like was always like very against the grain. I like never was good in my studies or anything like that.
Contrarian.
You still pronounced it wrong, dog. Yo, they said it like 20 times and you still end up pronouncing it wrong.
Yeah. But yeah, after that, like I went to college. I really fell in love with tech. And then I basically left college like 3 or 4 times to go work. I went to California, I worked at Intuit and a couple of like other smaller startups, and I just fucking did it, man. Like, and Harvey, you were asking about like advice for younger folks about like learning how to do this type of stuff. Biggest thing is just to learn how to build, right? Like if you learn how to have the hard skill of building, that is like the best base for being able to just go and do your own thing. And then the other thing is just
building anything or building. I have this belief that I feel like everybody should know how to do a little bit of coding. Like, so
building doesn't necessarily mean coding, right?
I know building. That's what I'm asking. Like, it can be anything, right? Like just using your hands. That's something that we lack in society.
So there's basically, I mean, the way I think about business in general is there's 2 facets to every business, right? There's the act of building and the act of selling, because every basically like business is building some sort of product that is sold for people, right? But essentially, like every business, like they build something and they sell it, right? Building could be, if you're in a tech space, it could be engineering, it could be designing, it could be all that type of stuff. And selling is not just sales, but just marketing, branding, all that type of stuff. If you're at a doctor's practice, the building skills is the person who builds the practice, like builds out the clientele, or not the clientele, but builds out the actual, like, things that you're fixing, like builds out the skill set to solve stuff like you do with your feet, Harvey. And then you have your like entire distribution side, right? And my advice to people is essentially like, learn the hard skill of building first, and then eventually learn the skill of selling, right? Because going from selling to building is a lot more difficult, and it's a lot easier to learn to build when you're young. But when you're older, you have like the hard skills to basically go into sales, which scales a lot more easily. Right. You can only build so much with your own hands, but selling, you could actually sell to a lot more people and you could apply more leverage. That's just like,
I agree with you. Like on like overall, I definitely agree with you on the building aspect, but I think the most people struggle with is just like pulling the trigger. That is like the biggest drawback to a lot of things. It's just like betting on yourself. The idea of accepting failure is like a bitter pill to swallow early on. Like for you, how did you like kind of overcome that? Like, did you have this innate confidence where like,
dude, no, it's not so much about innate confidence, but more so just like a fucking annoyance at every other alternative, right? Like, I don't like working for people. I don't like working on other things, but I also like working really hard, right? Mm-hmm. And really, the other thing is just accepting that there's going to be a lot of swings and misses, right? Like, every time you start a business, it's just like exposing yourself and exposing vulnerability. And the third thing is recognizing that every gain in life comes as a result of compound interest. There's no such thing as a get rich quick scheme or anything like that. If you're looking at money in a bank, compound interest is what propels that to like millions of dollars. If you're looking at your skill set, like if you learn something early on, you're going to suck ass at it at first and you're going to fail over and over again. And only with a compound interest in that skill is when you're going to get good at it. If you're looking at relationships build and compound over time. If like I meet somebody like very early on, I won't trust their judgment until like I've done like a lot of compounding business with them. Like Harvey, Rinku, and like Lucky, you guys I trust a lot because I've known you guys for many, many years, and that makes it so our relationship is at the point
big
where
things coming.
Talk on this guy. Yeah, exactly. Big things coming, bro. Like,
let me ask you a question here. So
yeah,
like there's a lot of kids, obviously like brown kids, like they got parental pressures and shit. Like personally, it's a lot more like, you know, get a stable job, plug in, and then do it for the rest of your life. And until you're stable, have a kid, have family and whatever, you're good. How do you like, navigate like convincing someone like that there's a bigger vision or like difficult.
That? It's very difficult. I think my dad still thinks I'm playing on my computer all day. Homeboy only thinks I'm successful if I go work at like a big company for like a very long time, right? And I think that the biggest thing is you have to have your stability, right? I worked in big corporate for a long time before I went into the startup game. Like I worked at a lot of jobs and I made my cash, so I had the ability to like invest into myself. Right. And dude, like when I first got into entrepreneurship, I blew through all my cash like very quickly. Right. And thankfully I had like, I mean, not blew through it, but like I still have my savings, my investments or whatever. But like, you know, I was bleeding capital while I was starting my businesses and learning how to do these skills. And the biggest thing is like, you have to be okay with those risks because as I said, it's really just about compound interest. You're taking your swings, you're learning the skills and like those things compound over time. And the other thing is like, even from that perspective, if you do things on your own, you spend your free time to build, you're building a skill set that is very hireable. So even if you want to go back into the workforce in any type of a way, you're going to end up at a better place if you just spend your free time just building or just like, you know, exposing yourself to the world like that, you know. It is scary though. It is scary.
I agree with like your concept of like just building with like, if you're starting out with like a new project or something, but at the end of the day, I feel like just like a great
Samraaj,
marketer.
you know that KB is like a coder now? Yo, sorry, KB.
Yeah, I know about it, bro. He's talked to me about it a few times.
Oh, okay.
I've talked to him. Yeah. Yo, I forgot what I was going to say.
You were talking about building and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I was saying like the concept of building, right? I think that works out for like new business ideas, right? When you're first starting out and you're like passionate about something. But at the end of the day, if you really want to sell, like a great marketer will always be like a great product, no matter what. Like you would have a really good product if
it depends, right? Like the thing is when you're looking at marketing, like your margins are run against your churn, right? And your churn is defined if you have like a really shitty product, right? And yeah, like after a specific point of like quality of your product, marketing takes over. But there are tons of examples of the opposite, right? Like it just depends on what you look at. And you're right, like learning how to build is like one of the most important skills. But if you're looking at a high level, there's really just two things a business does, which is build and sell. And marketing is about selling, and selling is really just like the big piece about making the money, and I think it's a huge important piece of the pie, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with you, Gaby. I feel like, yeah, marketing plays a big role, but at the end of the day, the superior product always comes out on top. It might not have like a stronger trajectory in the beginning, but people are always going to pick quality over quantity.
It's good product and position.
I don't know.
I don't know about that, Harvey.
It's not necessarily true, dude. There's tons of shitty ass products that have taken over good products. But the thing is they're positioned properly, and that's the thing.
Do you guys have an example? Like,
Apple still dominate over most cell phones, and most cell phones are better than fucking Apple.
Apple's fire,
dude. No, that's not true, bro. Like
Apple's pretty quality. Like what?
The Apple user experience is unbeatable compared to
facts.
Yeah.
Wait, what do you guys think is the definition of capitalism? To me, it is like to bring the best product to the market, and that's what prevails.
Well, that's not necessarily true, right? Like, you could apply leverage with like your marketing in order to like take a shittier project, just like KB is talking about, and that's all just aspects of this stuff, right? So it's just like taking what you're good at and just applying it to whatever you're doing, right?
But that can only get you so far. You at the end of the day, you need to have like the best quality, you know, like.
It can only get you so far. I mean, there's a tight relationship between the two, right? Like if you have a shitty ass product, people are going to churn. And that's just like the fact of the matter, right? Like, and that's why I'm saying, man, like the best skill to learn early on is to learn how to build and then just go from there.
Let's look at Kanye for real quick, right?
Bro, big fan, man.
Yo, no cap. Some of his shit is fire, no cap. But like, recently, you guys see this like new like space shoe, whatever.
Yeah,
his name is Ye now.
All right, easy, yay. Yeah, like look at his like space shoe and shit, right? Like, do you think like this will soon? You think the hype will soon like die away because like the product isn't there?
He's at a point where he doesn't have to care about anything anymore, man. That's my opinion of the matter, right? Like he does not have to give a fuck about like if people really like his stuff, because he's already made it to like another extent, right? And no matter what he does now, even if he fucking tarnishes his legacy, like those first albums will still be like classics and like some of the basis of like modern hip hop. So I think it's gonna be fine.
You are a big Ye fan, right?
Yeah, fucking huge Ye fan. I mean, not too much.
I remember you had that art piece, right, in your room.
Yeah, my mom drew it for me.
Yeah.
I remember like, my mom's kind of the same way as me. She's like some of my entrepreneurial like inspiration. But like, dude, I remember I would look at like posters. I was gonna buy this poster of like Kanye's like the bear sitting on a throne, and she looked at it and she's like, "Nah, fuck that. You're not spending $30 on that." And she just like drew it for me.
Wait, so Samraaj, to touch back on what Deej is saying and what you just kind of highlighted. So do you think you still would have this like, the entrepreneurial mindset if it wasn't for like your parents like kind of supporting you? I mean, in a way, you said your dad thinks you won't be successful if you don't work at a big name like corporation or whatever. But at the same time, starting out early on, like I think you said you worked at Microsoft and stuff like that. So do you think
briefly, I interned there.
Okay. Yeah. So to tie it all together, do you think you would still have this execution prowess of whatever you want if it wasn't for like more of a strict brown household, if you like came from that?
It depends, actually. I actually think that I could have been encouraged a lot more when it came to entrepreneurship. I actually wasn't at all. It was really, I kind of discovered that on my own during college, and it was just something that was a part of who I am in a lot of ways. But my parents are incredibly supportive of that stuff, and it really happened a lot more after they realized I like had like hard skills. Right. Like after like I first got those jobs and proved that like, hey, I can go to the work and make this type of cash, and I have the ability to go back into that whenever I want. And I had like made a certain amount of cash in like in the field. That's when they were like, okay, he knows at least somewhat what he's doing, and we're okay, like, like just getting off of his back about like going and getting a job or whatever, instead of like just approaching like his entrepreneurial like aspirations or whatever. And I mean, it's worked out, right? Like I actually have stability through like our funding and stuff like that. So I mean, I'm not barely paying myself and stuff like that, but equity makes a lot more over time, hopefully. Right. But they've kind of backed off about that type of stuff, but it was very difficult. But yeah, to actually answer your question a little bit more directly, I think that I wouldn't be in the place I am if it wasn't for their support. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cause I think what Deej was saying, his, from his background, his parents kind of want him to like follow more of a traditional, route. And that's where he's like been, I don't know if you like listen to our previous podcast, like, that's like one of like the biggest obstacles in his like pursuit right now, betting on yourself. So that's it. And I always wanted to ask you, because ever since I met you, you always like talk about like you have this particular idea, you want to, bring it to the world and stuff like that. And to me, it's just so bizarre because my parents think like, if I don't have like, don't go to med school, engineer, or a lawyer, you ain't shit, essentially. Like, you're just like kind of wasting time, and time is a valuable resource. Yeah.
Time is the most scarce resource, man. Yeah. I mean, I agree, but like, as I said, I'm a contrarian or whatever it's called, right?
Yo, so have you always like had this like innate confidence, or like, I mean,
hell no, dude. I was the most like shy kid of all time. So I mean, like, dude, I have a lot of like sicknesses. So like when I was really young, I was like chronically ill and stuff like that. Like I was like always covered in rashes, like blood and stuff like that when I was like a baby, up until I was like 5, 6. I have like really bad asthma, really bad like allergies, stuff like that, which is actually why I got into cooking.
He's like heavy allergic to nuts.
I was actually. Well, I'll talk about that in a little bit, but essentially like from that, like I was actually like very unconfident for most of my life. And I only really discovered my confidence after like moving out after high school and stuff. Right. And that's where I really just kind of came out of my shell, because like the thing is, I realized after like learning the code and like learning how to like talk to people a little bit more, America gives you the opportunity to just go and just do whatever you want, right? Like you can see an opportunity, you could just fucking chase it, and you could chase it with whatever heart you have. You could chase it like with whatever you want, and society and the world will reward that in some sort of a way. And that kind of gave me the confidence to go after it, and just repetition, I guess.
Damn.
I mean, you gotta have some sort of like plan. You can't just like go after something. So you have to
I mean, you have to train your judgment. Right? Mm-hmm. Like, but I will say that like if you overthink action, it impedes action. And action is the way that you get these swings and misses, right? Like if you look at the world as a pessimist,
just do it.
Yeah, dude. If you look at the world as a pessimist, you will convince yourself not to do everything, right? Like if you like, my thought is like, yo, man, if you're a pessimist, like you can basically barely make it as an entrepreneur, because like, you will always convince yourself not to do anything.
Yo, optimistic people always make it further. I'm reading like this book right now. Like it's a book about system 1 and system 2 of your mind, like how to like think faster. But yeah, it's like people that like are optimistic, like, yeah, like they might like over exaggerate things and stuff, but like those people have like more luck in life. They have like,
because you get yourself in a position to be lucky. I mean, here's my thing, right?
Yeah.
I'm all about, I think this was said by like Naval Ravikant or something, but it's short-term optimism.
That's like the naval guy, right? Or naval?
Yeah, naval. Naval.
He literally just says Naval, and
no, he said his like full name.
Naval, yeah, or Naval is like what basically everyone else.
He said like Naval Ranti or something like that.
Ravikant, dude, I live my life by his mantras, like honestly speaking. But short-term pessimism, long-term optimism. That's like basically the mindset that you want to live by. Short-term things suck, but things will work out in the long term. And I mean, if you actually analyze pessimism and optimism, we have an evolutionary built-in, like we are evolved to be pessimists, right? Like there's an evolutionary advantage to be a pessimist. Because I mean, like if you're thinking about like ancient people, if you're walking around in the jungle or some shit and you hear a noise, you're gonna run because like if like 9 times out of 10 it's like a rabbit, but 1 time out of 10 it's a tiger, you're gonna get eaten like 1/10 of the time, which means a pessimist will always survive. But we're not in a world anymore where we're going to get eaten by tigers out in the street or anything like that. Like pessimism is something that is innate for us, but we have to learn how to reject in some way and like accept a world that can be optimistic and accept a world that can be great, you know?
I mean, I agree with you. You know, blind optimism goes a long way, but
not blind optimism. It's about applying your judgment to the optimism, right? It's about looking through the world in that type of a lens, and then getting your repetitions in, right? Like if you impede action, you're never gonna compound like the interest that you have in skills, and you're never gonna compound like your skill set. Yeah. Like you're gonna always convince yourself not to do anything, and that also applies to your judgment. The more times you make dumbass decisions, the less times you'll make them in the future. Right.
Yeah, that's actually really nice.
Always bias towards action towards things because you will teach yourself a lot faster than you can convince yourself about anything.
I mean, judgment takes time. Like I agree with everything you're saying. Judgment is, you know, the failures teach you a lot, and then you'll hone your skin. Or what was it? The phrase you say, Deech? Like you sharpen your teeth or something. You cut your
cut your teeth
or something like that.
Hone your skills.
But I think But for me, like when I viewed it, but I was in more of like, you know, the traditional go to a 4-year college and then, you know, work at a company and stuff like that. I think capital is like the biggest drawback to taking a risk, you know, in this.
Yeah, I agree. Like the way that I would say it is like go work, get yourself established and then go do stuff like this. Right. Like, I mean, it is still what I did. Right. Like, even though like I'm a fucking contradictian and I always was like spending all my free time doing like random bullshit. Right. Like I still went and got a job.
You still have like a safety net, right? Like
exactly. Like
you have stability. So until you get stability, that's when you start wilding out more and more.
Exactly. I mean, that's when I could justify going full time for my own aspirations, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I was doing it on the side, which was actually terrible because, like, man, I basically like it was very hard to try to hustle like while having like a 9 to 5 or anything like that. But try to get your repetitions in as much as possible, build your wealth net, build everything you can, and then while you are young and you have the ability to take risks like that, go and take those risks.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, you're gonna end up back in the workforce at a better role. You know,
facts.
So
I feel like build a life where you can live off like passively, and then you can just go aspire and do whatever you want to do.
And going back
like
to
that's the most ideal thing. Get to passive, like being able to sustain yourself passively as quickly as possible.
It's the thing that Neville says. Like dude, I'm a massive fan of the guy, so I always like quote a lot of the things. But
he came out with a book recently, right? You read it?
Yeah, I've read it like 3 times, dude. But
I got peeped that book.
Yeah, it's the Almanac of Novelty. It's actually not written by him, but he says build wealth, not cash or status. Like, and what that essentially means, wealth is the ability for you to make money while you sleep, right? Yeah. Like it's about like having robots and like facilities doing shit for you, having code running on your behalf, having like investments making cash for you. That is wealth. Otherwise, like status is what a lot of people chase. And status, again, also there's like an evolutionary advantage of having status because like the higher your status in like a tribe, like that, the more like likelihood that you'll have as a to be a survivor. And other one is just money, but like who the fuck cares about how much money you have in a bank if it's not actually working for you? You know, if like your money is tied to how much effort you put in, you're not applying leverage, and that means you aren't able to live a life that you love, in my opinion, at least.
All right, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Brown Boy Chronicles. We are available on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Check us out on Instagram at The Brown Boy Chronicles, and feel free to email us with any questions or stories. The email is brownboychronicles1@gmail.com. See you next time.